Hello and welcome to this vlog. I just wanted to brief a little bit about talk about actually what it makes to be a good care worker. Now, I do this several days a week for a company, and I have learned, and I haven't done it for very long, I've done it for just over a year, and I've learned a lot actually about being a care worker, about care companies, and I sort of always rely on feedback from the client. I believe that the feedback that you get from a client is more valuable than anything else that you can actually be taught. Now, obviously, when you start as a care worker, you are taught, if you like, the processes and such like that the company wants you to abide by and to provide for the clients that you're going to be visiting. And while that's all really very good, and that is the job part, there is sort of a non-tangible part of the job, which I feel is 10 times more important than doing the process work. There are sort of certain things, I believe there's sort of 4 things that are the most important. One is the medication, 2 is liquids, 3, not necessarily in this particular order, is food, and 4 is hygiene. And there probably are other things, but they are, if you like, the 4 most important things. After that comes things like keeping the place tidy, but being hygienic and clean, and emptying out the rubbish bins and all of those other things. But they are the 4 key main parts which every care worker should be doing anyway, in their job. But I believe, as I say, there are sort of non-tangible stuff, the softer side to the care work, which, in my opinion, makes the job, it just takes it to another level if you can, as a care worker, master these things. So I've listed 6 things that I would like to talk about in order of priority, really. The first one is communication. The communication, I find, and speaking with clients, now they're typically slightly deaf. Their hearing is not used typically as well, but you need to find that out. You find that out when you first go there, so you don't necessarily need to just assume that every person that you're visiting that happens to be 70 years or older is partly deaf. Some people go from having absolutely crystal clear hearing to not being able to hear a thing, completely stone deaf, despite the fact that they've got hearing aids, etc. So it can vary. So the communication part, as far as I'm concerned, is asking the question about whether they can hear you, clearly. And very often you have to slow down your language communication, because very often the elderly can't keep up with fast-paced talking. They may just want you to speak clearer. Raising your volume, not raising your voice as in such, because raising your voice would indicate that you're bordering on shouting, and that is a problem, because very often I've seen other carers shouting at clients with an aggressive look in their face, as well as sort of shouting, rah, 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 because they're frustrated that the person can't hear them. You don't need to shout. You don't need to change your facial expression. Keep smiling. That's a form of communication. So if you keep smiling and communicating and just raising your volume so that the person can actually hear what you're saying, speak clearer, So you're almost deliberately pronouncing every single word. Try not to speak too much or put too many words into what you're saying, and speak slightly slower so that the person that you're speaking to will have a little bit more time to understand what you're saying. So they not only hear you, but if you can speak clearer, the words sink in a little bit better. And also if you speak slower, it gives them time to process the information. Now, I've learned that this is one of the most key, out of all of the things really that I've got on this list, that is the biggest feedback that I've had. And included in the communication is not only communicating with the client in order to do your job, but also communicating as in sitting down and talking to them like they're a real human being. That is also very, very key to providing good care. Everything else that you have to do, they're not really interested in all of that. They just know that you're going to do it, and the next carer is going to do it, and the carer tomorrow is going to do it, or should be doing these things. But what makes you a better carer is the fact that you sit down and talk to people. Now, I know it's difficult sometimes with potentially a younger generation person speaking to somebody who's potentially 2 to 3 generations older than them, but at the same time, it is possible. There is an age difference, but you can talk about interesting things, observations that you make about their garden, or observations that you make about the paintings hanging on the wall. I mean, there are just so many things that you can actually talk about. Just having that communication and that conversation with somebody who very often doesn't see an awful lot of family, and very often only ever sees carers or doctors or district nurses visiting them, makes a huge difference. So that's the one thing that I'm talking about the most, and that to me is one of the most key elements to being a good care worker, is communication. The second thing that I've had an awful lot of feedback about, and also regarding other carers, I mean, again, all of this is just coming from the clients, which is the most important thing. So dress code. Dress code is probably one of the first things, apart from, as well as the communication and smiling and, being welcoming and being genuine about your communication with the client. But dress code, how you dress, the uniform that you're wearing, the shoes, the amount of time clients have said to me how much they appreciate that somebody's wearing a proper pair of shoes. Now, a proper pair of shoes to a person that's 70 years plus is typically a pair of leather shoes that have been polished, or a pair of shoes that have been cleaned and look presentable, not a pair of trainers or open-toed sandals, for instance. Again, the amount of times that I've had people saying that to me, really, you're a smart person, you're wearing clean, presentable, polished shoes. And I wear a tunic, which again is not my company's standard for men to wear, which I think is disappointing. But I bought my own proper tunics, and they are always ironed. I always wear black smart trousers, which are always ironed. My shoes are always clean and tidy and shining, polished. I clean them every day, and I give them a really good polish once a week. Makes a huge impact. Having your hair, I haven't got a lot of hair, but having your hair combed and smart and short, having a clean shave makes a big difference. Wearing deodorant, wearing aftershave, again, if you're in close proximity with your clients, they're going to smell your body odor. They're going to smell what you're like. On the flip side, very often our clients don't smell particularly well, but if they smell that the carer is clean shaven, tidy, smart, wearing, washed their hair and such like, and wearing perfume or cologne or something along those lines, it makes them feel better. It makes them feel like they're being looked after, somebody who looks after themselves, which is, quite key. Number 3 on my list, respect. I think this is also quite a key one. And the respect goes with regard to the client, their life, their position. It's their house, their property, their furniture, their kitchen that we're using to assist them with. And so it's worth bearing in mind that this isn't a place of employment. You are there to do a job in their environment, in their home. This is where they've lived for usually the largest part of their life. And so, you have to really respect their position, what position they've held in life, the career that they've had, the position they've had in the community. I mean, they are somebody who, at this stage of their life, because they need a care worker, things have changed for them, and probably not in a way that they really, really expected or are really very happy about being in at this point in time. But that's the way things are. But if you respect them for the fact that they have had a life, they've had a family, they've grown up, they've achieved positions in society and status in society and such like, that respect goes a long way for the client to feel like you really fully understand that they are more than what you're seeing, and that you're seeing them in now, if that makes sense. That they have come from a place, and the situation that they're in now is obviously not the most ideal sometimes place that they want to be, but they still need to be respected as human beings who are very often several generations older than you are, and have been through life. Number 4, boundaries. And what do I mean by boundaries? Boundaries are, you're a professional, you're assisting them in their own home, or wherever it is you happen to be. The boundaries have to be that you are there to do a professional job, and that the client is wanting or paying for that service, and so there has to be a professional boundary. Again, I've seen boundaries blurred quite often with clients where they become over familiar and then become overconfident with a client, as in, start joking around and sitting around and lounging on their sofas, or that, and sometimes I believe, in my opinion, I believe that to be where boundaries have gone beyond the professional status that you are in, or you're supposed to be in that person's house. And I think that that's also very important. And for me, it doesn't really matter whether you go there only once or whether you've been there 100 times. The boundaries still need to be there. You are still a professional going into their home to assist them with their life, and whatever it is that they need. And that needs to be maintained, and that shouldn't really be let down. It doesn't stop you being friends, but I think over familiarity breeds contempt, and therefore when those boundaries become blurred, things start to go wrong. The client then starts losing faith in your ability to be a professional and to do your job. And that kind of leads into my 5th point, which is to remain professional. Those two things I think go very, very well. The boundaries and remaining professional throughout. It doesn't really matter whether you go there and you're just making them lunch, or whether you're going there and you're helping them with personal hygiene because they've had a problem or they've had a fall or whatever it is. Maintaining that professional attitude, but also remaining, keeping those boundaries there, again, I think is the difference between a carer that is going to keep, is going to get the respect both ways, not only from the client, but also their family, that you are doing a professional job, that you're not becoming over familiar and such like, and that those boundaries are there, Now, the other key point, my last point, number 6, basically goes along the lines of, yes, you can communicate, you can be friendly, you can sometimes, because you go to a client on regular basis, you get to know them, they get to know you. But again, going back to the other 2 points about boundaries and remaining professional, one of the biggest key things I think which seems to undermine an awful lot of respect from clients, typically about other carers that I get feedback about, is don't gossip, don't moan, and don't talk about yourself and your problems with clients. The amount of times I've had feedback from clients saying that, such and such a carer has got this problem and they've got that problem and they were this in this life and they've got this amount of money and they spend that amount of money on these products, and, they're not happy with so-and-so and so-and-so, and they've got these marriage problems, and they've got this problem with their children, and this carer's got this. It goes on and on and on like that. And that, for me, I think then, that's about 3 or 4 points on here that have just gone down the toilet, really, with regard to respect, professionalism, and boundaries. When you start to gossip with a client about other carers, or about the company that you're working with, or about your own personal life, or anything else that's going on that doesn't really and shouldn't really come into that professional realm, you're then crossing the boundaries. You're then blurring that boundary. And again, as I say, very often the client loses respect for you when you start to do that, because they then talk about you as a carer to other carers, and also very often to the company that you're working for. Which again is not very professional, because, it blurs out the professional attitude that you're supposed to have by being a carer and being a caregiver. So I hope that that's really just my own feedback and my own observations and such like that I've gained my knowledge about over the last year or so, about being a caregiver and what makes, in my opinion, a professional and good caregiver to clients who you're visiting and such like, and assisting at home. So thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to sharing with you some other thoughts along these lines maybe, and about other subjects. Thank you.